My name is Margaret Hayes, and at 63 years old, I never expected to be a wealthy widow secretly sitting on $53 million while living like I'm on food stamps. I thought my quiet life was finally settled after losing my husband. I thought keeping the inheritance hidden was protecting my only son. I thought I was doing the right thing. Until my son got married. 5 days after the wedding, his new wife showed up at my door with a lawyer, demanding I sell my house and hand over what she calculated I was hiding. She had it all planned out, how to get me declared incompetent, how to break my trust, how to take everything my late husband and I spent 40 years building. What she didn't know was that I'd been watching her, recording her, and preparing for this exact moment. Before I tell you how I almost lost my son to a gold digger who researched him like a business deal, hit subscribe and stay with me. You'll want to hear how a modest widow making $35,000 a year in Social Security outsmarted a millionaire real estate agent who thought she'd found an easy target. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is underestimate a mother protecting her child. If you've ever had to keep a painful secret to protect someone you love, this story is for you. Let's begin. My husband Thomas and I built our fortune the old-fashioned way, through decades of sacrifice, smart investments, and living well below our means. Thomas started as a mechanical engineer in the 1970s, but he had a gift for seeing patterns in the stock market that others missed. While our neighbors upgraded to bigger houses and fancier cars, we stayed in our starter home, drove used vehicles, and invested every spare dollar. Meg, Thomas would say, holding my hand across our worn kitchen table, we're not building this for us. We're building security. Real security. The kind that gives our son choices we never had. Our son Michael was our world. We raised him with the same values we live by. Work hard, stay humble, help others. He never knew about the growing fortune. Why would we tell him? He was a good boy who became a good man, working as a high school history teacher because he loved it, not because it paid well. That's exactly what we wanted for him, to choose his path for love, not money. Thomas passed away 2 years ago, suddenly, from a heart attack while working in the garden. One moment he was planting tomatoes, laughing about something silly, and the next he was gone. The grief was crushing, but the lawyers and financial advisors appeared within days, explaining that everything, every single dollar, every stock, every bond, now belonged to me. $53 million. I sat in that lawyer's office, numb, barely hearing the words. Thomas had structured everything perfectly. Trusts, tax shelters, diversified portfolios. He'd even left detailed instructions about how to protect it, how to make it last, how to ensure Michael would be taken care of without it destroying his character. Your husband was very clear, the attorney said, sliding a sealed letter across the desk. He wanted you to tell Michael about the inheritance when you felt he was ready, not before. He trusted your judgment completely. I took the letter home and read it 100 times. Thomas had written, Meg, you know our boy better than anyone. Wait until he's truly settled, until he knows who he is and what he values. Money changes people, even good people. Make sure he's strong enough to carry this weight. So I stayed silent. I continued living in our little house, shopping at discount stores, having coffee with my book club friends who had no idea. Michael visited every Sunday for dinner, and we'd talk about his students, his lesson plans, his dreams of maybe writing a history book someday. He was happy. He was grounded. He was exactly the man we'd raised him to be. Until he met Veronica. Michael called me on a Tuesday evening in March, his voice bright with excitement I hadn't heard in years. Mom, I met someone. Someone really special. I want you to meet her this Sunday. My heart swelled with happiness for him. At 35, Michael had dated but never seriously. He'd always said he was waiting for the right person, someone who shared his values. I spent all week planning the perfect dinner, imagining the kind of woman who would make my son's voice sound like that. When they arrived that Sunday, I opened the door to find Michael beaming, and beside him stood Veronica Chun. She was striking, tall, perfectly styled black hair, designer clothes that I recognized from magazines, even though I never bought them myself. Her smile was dazzling, professional, like she'd practiced it in front of a mirror. Mrs. Hayes, she said warmly, embracing me with perfectly calculated warmth. Michael has told me so much about you. This house is absolutely charming. So authentic and vintage. Something about the way she said vintage made it sound like old or cheap, but I pushed the thought away. First impressions could be wrong. I wanted to like her. Over dinner, Veronica dominated the conversation. She worked in commercial real estate, she explained, closing major deals for a firm in Manhattan. She talked about million-dollar properties the way I talked about grocery sales. Michael watched her with adoring eyes, occasionally squeezing her hand. So, Mrs. Hayes, Veronica said, dabbing her lips with a napkin. Michael tells me you've lived in this house for over 40 years. That's remarkable. Have you ever thought about selling? The real estate market in this area has exploded. A property like this could fetch $800,000 easily, maybe more. Oh, I couldn't sell, I said, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Thomas and I bought this house when we were newlyweds. Every room has memories. Of course, Veronica said quickly. Sentimental value. I completely understand. It's just that, well, as someone who works in real estate, I can't help but see these things from an investment perspective. You could sell, buy a nice condo, and have so much left over for travel, enjoying your retirement. Mom loves this house, Veronica, Michael interjected gently. She's staying right here. Veronica's smile never wavered, but something flickered in her eyes. Absolutely. Family home. Can't put a price on that. After they left, I stood in my kitchen washing dishes, trying to shake off an uneasy feeling. She seemed nice enough, successful, confident. Maybe I was just being an overprotective mother. But Thomas's voice echoed in my mind. Trust your instincts, Meg. They've never steered you wrong. Over the next few months, I saw Veronica often. She and Michael became inseparable. She was always pleasant to me, always complimentary. But there was something calculating in the way she watched me, the way she studied my house. One afternoon when Michael was in the bathroom, Veronica wandered into Thomas's old study, which I'd kept mostly as he left it. Oh, don't mind me, she said when I found her there, examining the books on his shelves. I was just curious about Michael's father. He doesn't talk about him much. Thomas was a private man, I said, my protective instincts rising. He was an engineer. Just an engineer? She pulled out one of Thomas's investment books, flipping through it casually. These are pretty advanced financial texts. Was he interested in the stock market? He enjoyed reading about it, I said carefully. She replaced the book. You know, I looked up this house in the county records. You and your husband bought it for $65,000 in 1982. That's an incredible investment. Even after the mortgage, you must own it free and clear by now. We paid it off years ago, I said, not liking where this was going. Smart. Very smart. And on a teacher's salary and an engineer's salary. That must have required discipline. She smiled at me. You must have quite a nest egg saved up, living so modestly all these years. Before I could answer, Michael returned, and Veronica's demeanor shifted instantly, becoming playful and affectionate. But I felt like I'd just been interviewed, assessed, appraised like a property she was evaluating for her firm. That night, I called my attorney, David Morrison, who'd been handling our affairs for 15 years. David, is there any way someone could find out about Thomas's estate? About the money? Not unless you told them, Margaret. Everything is in trust with privacy protections. The probate was sealed. Unless someone had access to your personal financial records, they'd have no way of knowing. Why do you ask? I explained about Veronica and her questions. David was quiet for a moment. Margaret, you have good instincts. Keep your financial information private. Don't leave bank statements lying around. If you sense she's fishing for information, trust that feeling. And whatever you do, don't tell Michael about the money yet. Not until you're absolutely certain about this woman. I won't, I promised. Thank you, David. As I hung up, I felt the weight of my secret pressing down on me. I was protecting Michael, I reminded myself, just like Thomas wanted. But as the weeks passed and I watched my son fall deeper in love with a woman I didn't trust, I wondered if my silence was protection or a ticking time bomb. 6 months after they met, Michael called me with news that filled me with both joy and dread. Mom, I proposed. She said yes. We're getting married. I could hear Veronica squealing in the background, could picture Michael's face glowing with happiness. I forced enthusiasm into my voice, said all the right things, even as my stomach churned with worry. They came over that evening to celebrate, and Veronica showed me a stunning diamond ring, easily 3 carats, I estimated, worth tens of thousands of dollars. Michael insisted on the best, Veronica said, admiring her hand. He said I deserved nothing less. Isn't he wonderful? I looked at my son, wondering how a high school teacher afforded such a ring. He caught my expression and explained quickly. I've been saving, Mom, for years, and I took out a small loan. Veronica is worth it. My heart sank. My practical son going into debt for a ring. But I smiled and hugged them both, keeping my concerns buried deep. We're thinking June, Veronica continued, pulling out her phone to show me photos of venues she'd already researched. The waterside estate in Greenwich. It's absolutely breathtaking. The venue alone is $75,000, but for 200 guests, it's actually quite reasonable. $75,000. The words came out before I could stop them. For the venue, yes. Then there's catering, flowers, photography, the band. Veronica scrolled through her notes. We're looking at about $250,000 total. Maybe 300 if we do everything we want. Michael shifted uncomfortably. We're still working out the budget, Mom. Veronica's parents are contributing and I have some savings and we thought maybe you might want to contribute as well. Veronica finished smoothly. It's traditional for the groom's parents to help with certain aspects. And since you're Michael's only family, we were hoping you might be able to help make our dream day possible. They both looked at me expectantly. I felt trapped, cornered in my own kitchen. I'd love to help, I said slowly, but I'm on a fixed income and I need to be careful with my retirement savings. I can contribute $15,000. The silence that followed felt like a judgment. Veronica's smile tightened imperceptibly. 15,000, she repeated flatly. That's generous, Mrs. Hayes. Thank you. But her tone suggested it wasn't generous at all. It suggested I was being cheap, selfish, holding back when I should be giving more. Michael squeezed my hand. That's wonderful, Mom. Thank you. We'll make it work. After they left, I sat in Thomas's study, surrounded by his books and his presence, and cried. I was doing this all wrong. Maybe I should tell Michael the truth. But Veronica's calculating eyes, her questions about the house, her obvious focus on money, everything in me screamed that she wasn't in love with my son. She was in love with what she thought he could provide, what she thought I was hiding. The wedding planning consumed the next 6 months. Veronica called me often, always friendly, always asking questions that felt like interrogations. So Michael mentioned you and his father never took big vacations. You must have saved so much money over the years. Do you have any investments? Stocks? Bonds? Nothing exciting, I'd deflect. Just a modest retirement account. But surely Thomas had a pension from his engineering firm? And life insurance. He took care of things, I'd say vaguely, changing the subject. I noticed Michael pulling away from me, spending less time at Sunday dinners, canceling our traditional mother-son birthday celebrations. When he did visit, Veronica was always with him, directing conversations, making plans, slowly building a wall between us. One Saturday afternoon, I stopped by Michael's apartment unannounced, something I never did, because he'd forgotten to return my casserole dish and wasn't answering his phone. I used the spare key he'd given me and let myself in. Voices drifted from the bedroom. I should have called out, should have announced myself, but something made me freeze in place. I'm telling you, Michael, she has money. Nobody lives that simply for 40 years on those salaries without building up substantial savings. My guess is at least 2 or 3 million. Veronica, even if she did, it's her money. She earned it. She can do whatever she wants with it. Of course she can, baby. I'm just saying, most parents want to help their children, and we're trying to start our life together. The wedding is just the beginning. We need a house, not some rental apartment. We need to think about our future, about giving our children the life they deserve. My mom is giving us $15,000. That's not nothing. $15,000, Veronica scoffed, when she's probably sitting on millions. Do you know what I could do with that money? The properties I could invest in? The life we could build? We'll build our own life. I have my teaching job. You have your career. Oh, Michael. Her voice turned sweet, manipulative. You're so noble. It's one of the things I love about you. But nobility doesn't pay for private schools or vacation homes or the lifestyle I've worked so hard to achieve. Your mother is being selfish, hoarding her money when she could be helping us. I backed out of the apartment silently, my hands shaking, my heart breaking. I drove home in a daze and immediately called David Morrison. David, I need to update my will. Today. Right now. David came to my house that same evening with his assistant. We sat in my living room as I explained what I'd overheard. Margaret, I'm going to be very direct with you, David said. This woman is a threat. She's actively calculating your worth and planning how to access it. If she marries Michael, she could potentially influence him to challenge your estate planning, to demand early inheritance, even to question your mental capacity if you refuse. She can't really do that, can she? She can try. And the legal fees alone could be devastating. We need to protect you and protect Michael's true inheritance. He pulled out documents from his briefcase. Here's what I recommend. Over the next 2 hours, we restructured everything. My assets went into an irrevocable trust with David and a corporate trustee as managers. Michael was the beneficiary, but he couldn't access the principal until I passed away. And even then, the trust would distribute funds gradually over 20 years. Veronica would have no legal claim to any of it. We also set up a medical directive and power of attorney for David and my oldest friend, Ruth, making it impossible for anyone to claim I wasn't of sound mind. What about the wedding gift? I asked. I promised $15,000. Give it. Show no signs of financial stress. Continue your modest lifestyle. If she suspects you're protecting assets, she might escalate before the wedding. Our goal is to get Michael legally married so that when the truth comes out, and it will come out, he has legal options for divorce or annulment. You think it will come to that? Margaret, in 30 years of practicing law, I've seen this scenario dozens of times. Women and men who marry for money show their true colors eventually, often spectacularly. The question is whether Michael will see it before or after the wedding. As David left, I felt more alone than I had since Thomas died. I was protecting my son from a fortress of legal documents and trusts, but what I really wanted was to protect him with the truth. I wanted to sit him down and say, Michael, you're going to inherit $53 million someday, but this woman doesn't love you. She loves what she thinks you can give her. But I couldn't. Not yet. Because if I was wrong, if Veronica genuinely loved him, telling him about the money would change everything anyway. The money had to stay secret until I knew for certain what kind of woman my son was marrying. The wedding approached like a storm on the horizon. Veronica sent me constant updates, always mentioning costs, always highlighting how helpful her parents were being. My parents are covering the entire reception, she'd say pointedly. All $150,000. They just want us to be happy. The implication was clear. See how generous real parents are? I wrote the check for $15,000 and gave it to Michael privately. He hugged me, thanking me, apologizing for Veronica's behavior. She's just stressed about the wedding, he said. She'll relax after we're married. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe him. The week before the wedding, Veronica called me for lunch. Just the two of us. I almost declined, but curiosity won out. We met at an expensive restaurant, her choice. She looked radiant, excited, but there was something sharp in her eyes. Mrs. Hayes, I wanted to talk to you privately, woman to woman. She reached across the table and took my hands. I know you don't have much money to give us for the wedding, and that's okay. Really. But Michael and I have been talking about our future, and we're going to need help getting started. What kind of help? Well, we're looking at houses. Nothing crazy, just something in a good neighborhood with good schools. We found a place in Westport for $900,000. We can get a mortgage for most of it, but we need help with the down payment. If you could give us $150,000, we could. $150,000. I pulled my hands back. Veronica, I don't have that kind of money. Please don't lie to me. Her voice hardened. I've done my research. Your house is worth at least 800,000. You've lived frugally for decades. You have no mortgage, no car payment, no debt. You have money, and you're choosing not to help your only son. I'm on a fixed income. You're sitting on a fortune while Michael works himself to exhaustion for 45,000 a year. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. I know your type. Depression-era mentality, hoarding every penny, probably have cash stuffed in your mattress. Well, Michael deserves better. He deserves a mother who wants him to succeed. I stood up, my heart pounding. This lunch is over. Fine. But you're making a big mistake, Margaret. A big mistake. She smiled coldly. See you at the wedding. I drove home shaking, called David immediately, and told him everything. Document this, he said urgently. Write down every word you remember. Date it, time it, sign it. If things go badly, we may need evidence of her behavior. I spent that evening writing out the entire conversation, my hand cramping, my heart breaking. My son was marrying this woman in 6 days. The waterside estate was everything Veronica had promised. Elegant, expensive, perfect. I arrived early, wearing a simple but nice dress I'd bought for the occasion, and found myself immediately surrounded by Veronica's family and friends, all dressed like they'd walked off fashion runways. Veronica's mother, Patricia, a woman who'd clearly had extensive plastic surgery, looked me up and down with barely concealed disdain. You must be Michael's mother. How nice that you could make it. Veronica mentioned you lived very simply. I do, I said, refusing to be ashamed. Well, at least Michael married up, Patricia said, laughing at her own cruel joke. The ceremony was beautiful, I had to admit. Michael looked handsome in his tuxedo, his eyes never leaving Veronica as she walked down the aisle in a dress that probably cost more than my car. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promising to love each other in wealth and poverty, in sickness and health. But as Veronica said her vows, I watched her eyes drift past Michael to scan the crowd, calculating, assessing. This wasn't a woman looking at her beloved. This was a woman looking at an investment paying off. During the reception, I sat at a table with some of Michael's teaching colleagues, nice people who seemed as uncomfortable with the opulence as I was. Veronica certainly knows how to throw a party, one of them said diplomatically. $300,000 for a wedding, another whispered. I could buy a house for that. I excused myself to get some air and found myself in a side garden, alone with my thoughts and my fears. This was it. Michael was married. The deed was done. There you are. Veronica's voice came from behind me. She was holding a glass of champagne, slightly tipsy, her public mask slipping. Hiding from the party? Just needed a moment, I said. You know, Margaret, you really should have helped us more. This wedding could have been even better if you'd been more generous. She took a sip of champagne. But that's okay. Now that we're family, officially family, things are going to change. What do you mean? I mean Michael and I are going to sit down with you next week and have a serious conversation about your finances, about what you're hiding, about what you owe your son. She smiled dangerously. I have a lawyer friend who specializes in elder financial abuse. Did you know that adult children can petition to investigate if they believe a parent is being financially exploited or is making unsound decisions? Or if they believe assets are being hidden from rightful heirs? You're threatening me at your own wedding. I'm informing you of reality. You have money. Michael deserves access to it. Either you give it willingly, or we'll find legal ways to compel you. Your choice. She turned to walk away, then looked back. Oh, and I'd appreciate it if you'd leave soon. You're bringing down the energy of the party with your discount store dress and your poverty mindset. I left. I left my son's wedding, drove home through tears, and called David Morrison from my driveway. She threatened me. She as much as said she'd have me declared incompetent if I don't give them money. Then we moved to the next phase, David said grimly. Tomorrow morning, I'm filing paperwork to make your medical and financial protections even stronger. And Margaret, I think it's almost time to tell Michael the truth. But not yet. Let them show their full hand first. Let them make their move. When they do, we'll be ready. I barely slept that night. Michael called the next morning, apologizing for Veronica's behavior, saying she'd had too much champagne, saying she didn't mean any of it. but I could hear her voice in the background, coaching him, telling him what to say. My son was gone. The woman I'd raised, the boy who used to bring me dandelions and say they were prettier than roses. He was somewhere inside that man on the phone, but I couldn't reach him anymore. They returned from their honeymoon in Bali 3 weeks later. Michael called to invite me to dinner at their new apartment, the one I hadn't been consulted about, hadn't been invited to see. Didn't even know they'd rented. It's a surprise, Mom. We want to show you our first home together. I should have known something was wrong when I arrived and found not just Michael and Veronica, but also a strange man in an expensive suit, holding a briefcase and sitting at their dining room table like he belonged there. Mom, this is Robert Chambers, Michael said, looking uncomfortable. He's a financial advisor. We asked him to meet with us because we need to talk about planning for the future. Your future or my future? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Veronica smiled her practiced smile. Margaret, please sit down. This is about all of our futures. As a family, I sat, but kept my purse in my lap, ready to leave at any moment. Robert Chambers opened his briefcase and pulled out several documents. Mrs. Hayes, I've been helping Michael and Veronica understand their financial situation and plan for their future. Based on what they've told me about your circumstances, living in a paid-off home worth approximately $800,000, having lived frugally for over 40 years on good professional salaries, I've calculated that you should have accumulated at least $2 to $3 million in savings and investments. You've calculated, I repeated, based on assumptions, based on mathematics and probability, Mrs. Hayes. Now, Veronica and Michael are at a critical point in their lives. They're talking about starting a family, but they're living in a rental apartment and struggling with student loans and credit card debt from the wedding. Meanwhile, you're living alone in a large house with what we believe are substantial assets. What we propose, Veronica cut in, is that you sell your house and move into a senior living community. There are lovely places with full services, activities, medical care on site. You'd be much better taken care of. The proceeds from your house, plus a portion of your other savings, would give Michael and us the down payment we need for a proper home where we can raise your grandchildren. I stared at my son. Michael, did you agree to this? He couldn't meet my eyes. Mom, we're not saying you have to do anything you don't want to do. We're trying to find a solution that works for everyone. A solution where I give up my home and my independence so you can buy a house you can't afford. It's not just about the house, Robert Chambers said smoothly. It's about optimal resource allocation across generations. You're 63 years old. Statistically, you have perhaps 20 years remaining. Keeping that much money sitting idle when the younger generation has immediate needs is simply poor financial planning. Statistically, I have 20 years remaining, I said slowly, letting the cruel words sink in. So you're asking me to give you money now because you think I'll be dead soon anyway? That's not what we're saying, Michael started. That's exactly what you're saying. I stood up, and the answer is no. This is my home, my money, my life. You don't get to calculate its worth and redistribute it because you want things you haven't earned. Veronica's mask finally fell completely. We knew you'd react this way. Selfish, greedy, clinging to your money while your own son struggles. Robert, show her the other documents. Robert Chambers pulled out more papers. Mrs. Hayes, these are petitions that can be filed with the probate court. They request an investigation into potential elder financial exploitation, possible diminished capacity, and whether you're making sound financial decisions. Given your age and your choice to live in relative poverty despite having substantial means, a court might determine that you require a conservatorship or guardianship. You're threatening to have me declared incompetent? I looked at Michael. And you're okay with this? Mom, nobody's threatening anything, Michael said desperately. We're just trying to make you understand how serious this is. We need help. I thought you'd want to help us. I gave you $15,000 for your wedding. I've offered to help in reasonable ways. But I will not give you my house or my savings because your wife wants to live beyond your means. My wife, Michael said, and his voice hardened in a way I'd never heard before. Yes, my wife. The woman I love. The woman I chose. And if you can't support us, support our marriage, then maybe we need some distance. Maybe we do, I said quietly, gathering my purse. When you're ready to have a conversation that doesn't involve lawyers and threats, you know where to find me. I walked out of that apartment and didn't look back, even though I heard Michael calling after me. I drove straight to David Morrison's office, shaking so badly I nearly sideswiped two cars on the way. David took one look at me and called his assistant to clear his afternoon. I told him everything, every word, every document, every threat. Right, he said grimly, already pulling files. Here's what we do. First, we have you examined by a geriatric specialist who will document your complete mental and physical competence. Second, we prepare a comprehensive response to any petition they might file. Third, we make sure every single asset protection measure is ironclad. And fourth, he paused. Fourth, we prepare to tell Michael the truth. Because, Margaret, you can't keep fighting this battle with one hand tied behind your back. If I tell him about the money now, he'll think I've been lying to him his whole life. You have been lying to him his whole life, David said gently. For good reasons. But the lie has become a weapon they're using against you. The truth might hurt him, but it might also wake him up to what Veronica really is. I spent the rest of that week being poked and prodded by doctors, answering endless questions from psychiatrists and geriatric specialists, all of whom concluded the same thing. I was in perfect mental and physical health, fully capable of managing my own affairs, and showing no signs of diminished capacity whatsoever. Meanwhile, Michael called me every day, his voice pleading, insisting we needed to work things out, that we were family and family didn't give up on each other. But Veronica was always there in the background, her voice a constant presence, coaching him, controlling him. I didn't answer after the third call. I couldn't bear to hear my son parrot his wife's manipulation anymore. It was Ruth, my dear friend Ruth, who'd known me for 40 years, who finally gave me the piece of information that changed everything. Margaret, I need to tell you something. I wasn't sure if I should, but after what you've told me about Veronica, she took a breath. My niece works at Veronica's real estate firm. She says Veronica is in serious financial trouble. She's been living way beyond her means for years, has over $200,000 in credit card debt, and she's being investigated by her firm for some questionable deals. She needs money desperately, Margaret. That's why she targeted Michael. Targeted? My niece says Veronica specifically looked for someone to marry who could solve her problems. She dated 3 other men this year before Michael, all with family money or inheritance potential. Michael was the one who bit fastest. I felt sick. Does Michael know any of this? I doubt it. Veronica is very good at hiding her real situation. But Margaret, you need to tell him. Before she bankrupts him trying to solve her problems. That night, I made a decision. I called David Morrison and told him to prepare everything. Documents, evidence, the full story. I was going to tell Michael the truth about the inheritance, about Veronica's financial situation, about everything. I'll set up a meeting, David said. My office. Next Tuesday. Neutral territory. I'll have everything documented and ready to present. And Margaret, you need to be prepared for how he might react. I know. He might hate me. But I'd rather have him hate me and be safe than love me and be destroyed by that woman. I tried calling Michael to set up the meeting, but he didn't answer. I tried texting, emailing. Nothing. It was like he'd disappeared. Finally, on Sunday, I drove to his apartment. I knocked for 5 minutes before the door opened, and when it did, I barely recognized my son. He looked exhausted, stressed, like he'd aged 10 years in 3 weeks. Mom, this isn't a good time. Michael, I need to talk to you. It's important. Please, just give me an hour. Veronica doesn't want you here. I don't care what Veronica wants. I'm your mother, and I need to talk to you. Alone. Something in my voice must have gotten through to him, because he stepped outside into the hallway, closing the door behind him. Mom, what is it? Tuesday. David Morrison's office. 2:00. I'm going to tell you something I should have told you a long time ago. Something about your father and about our finances. But I can't do it here, and I need you to come without Veronica. If this is about money again, it's about the truth. Please, Michael, trust me one more time. Give me one more chance to be your mother before you cut me out of your life completely. He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw my little boy in there somewhere, confused and hurting and wanting his mom. Okay, Tuesday at 2. But after that, if you can't help us, if you won't help us, then I need you to respect my marriage and my choices. I will. I promise. I drove home with my heart in my throat. Tuesday. In 2 days, everything would come out. For better or worse, my son would finally know the truth. David Morrison's office was on the 15th floor of a downtown building, all dark wood and leather furniture. Michael arrived exactly at 2 o'clock, looking nervous and defensive. He'd come alone, as promised, though I could only imagine the fight that had caused with Veronica. David stood to shake his hand. Michael, thank you for coming. What your mother needs to tell you today is difficult for her, and I'm here to help explain the legal and financial details. Please sit down. Michael sat beside me, his body language closed off, but his eyes betrayed confusion and curiosity. I took a deep breath. Michael, when your father died 2 years ago, he left everything to me. Not just the house. Everything. I know, Mom. I was at the will reading. He left you his pension, his life insurance, the house. That's what people do. There was more than that. Much more. The will reading you attended was for the personal items, the house, the cars. But there was another meeting, one you didn't attend, because your father specifically requested that I handle the financial details alone first. I nodded to David, who opened a thick file and pulled out documents. Michael, David said gently, your father was an extraordinarily gifted investor. Over 40 years, he built a portfolio worth $53 million. The silence that followed was absolute. Michael stared at David, then at me, then at the documents David was sliding across the desk. 53 million? Yes. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, real estate holdings. All carefully managed, all protected in various trusts and structures. Your father left everything to your mother, with you as the ultimate beneficiary. Michael's face went through a dozen emotions: shock, disbelief, anger, hurt. You have $53 million? And you didn't tell me. Your father didn't want me to. Not until you were ready. Not until you were settled and secure in who you are. I reached for his hand, but he pulled away. Michael, money changes people. Your father saw it happen to his colleagues, to his friends. People who got inheritances and lost themselves, lost their purpose, lost their values. He wanted you to build your own life first. So you let me struggle through college loans, through starting my teaching career on poverty wages, through worrying about every bill, when you had $53 million? Yes, because we wanted you to know the value of work, the satisfaction of earning your own way. We wanted you to choose teaching because you loved it, not because you could afford to love it. And now, Michael's voice was rising. Why tell me now? Because I'm married? Because Veronica pushed too hard? Because Veronica isn't who you think she is. I pulled out the file Ruth's niece had provided, credit card statements, investigation reports, evidence of Veronica's financial problems. She targeted you, Michael. She's in over $200,000 in debt. She's being investigated for fraud at her firm. She needs money desperately, and she thought you had access to mine. Michael snatched the documents, reading through them with increasing horror. Page after page of credit cards maxed out, of loans taken and defaulted on, of questionable real estate deals, of emails between Veronica and her friends discussing the teacher with the loaded mom as a project. No, she loves me. She wouldn't. Michael, look at this one. David pointed to a printed email dated 2 weeks before Michael had even met Veronica. She's discussing you specifically. Someone in her social circle told her about you. Young teacher, single, dead father, frugal widow mother. She calculated that your mother must have money and planned her approach accordingly. Michael stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair. This is insane. You're lying. You're making this up because you never liked her, because you're jealous that I have someone. I'm not lying. My voice cracked. Michael, please. I know this is devastating, but you need to know who you married. She doesn't love you. She loves what she thought you could give her. You don't know that. You can't know that. She threatened me at your wedding. She told me she'd have me declared incompetent if I didn't give her money. She brought a lawyer to ambush me in your apartment. She wants to force me to sell my house and give her the proceeds. Michael grabbed the emails, the credit reports, all the evidence. I need to go. I need to think. I need to talk to Veronica. Michael, wait. But he was already gone, the doors slamming behind him so hard the windows rattled. I buried my face in my hands. I've lost him. I've lost my son. No, David said firmly. You've given him the truth. What he does with it is up to him. But Margaret, you need to be prepared for what comes next. If Veronica realizes you've told him, she's going to escalate dramatically. David was right. That evening, my phone exploded with messages. First from Veronica, claiming I was lying, that I'd fabricated documents, that I was trying to destroy her marriage. Then from Michael, confused and angry, demanding to know what else I'd hidden from him. Then from Veronica's lawyer, Robert Chambers, threatening to sue me for defamation. Then silence. For 3 days, nothing. I called Michael 50 times. No answer. I drove to his apartment. No one home. I called his school. He'd taken personal days. On the 4th day, Michael showed up at my house. He looked like he hadn't slept, his eyes red, his face pale. I need to show you something, he said. Michael pulled out his phone and played a recording. It took me a moment to recognize the voices, his and Veronica's, having an argument. You knew. You knew about the money and you didn't tell me. Of course I knew. Why do you think I married you? Certainly not for your $45,000 a year teaching salary. So everything was a lie. Our whole relationship. Don't be so dramatic, Michael. I like you well enough. You're nice. You're stable. You'll be a good father someday. But let's be real. I need financial security, and your mother is sitting on a fortune. Once we get access to it, we can actually have the life I've worked for. She's not going to give us that money, Veronica. She's protected it legally. It's in trusts. Then we'll break the trusts. My lawyer says we have options. We can challenge her competency, claim she's being unduly influenced by her own lawyer, argue that she's denying her adult child his rightful inheritance. I don't want to fight my mother. Then you're a coward. And I made a mistake marrying you. The recording ended. Michael looked at me with devastated eyes. I recorded her without her knowledge. After you showed me those documents, I pretended to believe her version of events, but I was watching, listening. She said worse things than that, Mom. So much worse. He sank onto my couch, and suddenly he was a little boy again, crying in his mother's arms. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't believe you. I'm so sorry I let her come between us. I'm so sorry. Sure. It's okay. It's going to be okay. How can it be okay? I married a monster. I gave her my name, access to my finances, my life. Mom, she's already destroyed my credit score. She opened cards in my name, took out loans using my information. I found out yesterday that I'm $300,000 in debt, and most of it isn't even mine. I held him while he cried, my heart breaking for him, but also flooding with relief that he finally knew the truth. David can help. We'll fix this. We'll get you out of this marriage, protect you financially, rebuild your credit. But Michael, you need to act fast. She'll know that you know, and she's going to come at us hard. David Morrison came to my house that evening and laid out a plan. Michael would file for annulment based on fraud. Veronica had materially misrepresented her financial situation and her intentions for the marriage. We'd document everything. The debt she'd hidden, the credit card she'd opened in his name, the recordings of her admitting to marrying him for money. This is going to get ugly, David warned. She's going to fight, and she's going to try to hurt you both in any way she can. He was right. The next day, Veronica showed up at my house with Robert Chambers and a court officer, attempting to serve me with papers claiming I was financially exploiting and psychologically manipulating Michael. I had expected this. David had prepared me. I stood in my doorway with my own lawyer, my medical reports, and my documentation ready. Mrs. Hayes is not required to speak with you, David said calmly. Any communication should go through her attorney, me. As for these petitions, we'll be responding with a full accounting of Mrs. Hayes's perfect mental competency, along with evidence of Mrs. Chen's fraudulent actions toward Michael Hayes. Michael is my husband, Veronica snarled, dropping her professional facade completely. Whatever money that old woman has will eventually be his, and therefore mine. You can't keep us from what we deserve. Actually, I can, I said quietly. And I will. You married my son under false pretenses. You exploited him, manipulated him, and tried to use him to steal from me. That ends now. You think you've won? Veronica's voice turned vicious. You think because you have lawyers and money that you can just destroy my life? I'll tell everyone what kind of mother you are. I'll go to the media. I'll make sure the whole world knows about the selfish widow who hoarded millions while her son struggled. Do it, I said. Tell anyone you want. I've done nothing wrong. I protected my assets, which is my legal right. I protected my son, which is my moral obligation. And now I'm going to help him divorce you and reclaim his life. Robert Chambers pulled Veronica away before she could say anything else, but her parting look promised that this wasn't over. It wasn't. For the next 3 weeks, Veronica waged war. She leaked stories to local gossip blogs about the millionaire miser who refused to help her struggling son. She called Michael's school, making allegations about his conduct. She tried to freeze his bank accounts. She showed up at my house at odd hours, screaming accusations. But we had something she didn't: the truth, documentation, and the law on our side. The annulment was granted based on clear evidence of fraud. The marriage had lasted less than 3 months. Michael's debts in his name, but incurred by Veronica, were traced and documented. She was ordered to pay restitution. The investigation at her firm expanded, and eventually she was terminated and charged with several counts of fraud. The last I heard, she'd moved to another state, still owing Michael over $200,000 she'd probably never pay. 6 months after the annulment, Michael and I sat together in my kitchen. Our kitchen, really, since he'd moved back in while he rebuilt his life. We were having coffee on a Saturday morning, a ritual we'd started doing again. I got the final credit report back yesterday, Michael said. It's going to take a few more years, but my score is coming back up. David says I should be able to buy a modest place of my own in about 18 months. There's no rush, I said. I like having you here. I like being here. He smiled, that genuine smile I hadn't seen in over a year. Mom, I need to say something. I need to apologize again. Michael, we've been through this. No, please. Let me say it. He took a breath. I let someone come between us. I chose to believe the worst about you instead of trusting the woman who raised me, who sacrificed everything for me. I was blinded by, I don't even know what. Love? Lust? The idea of having someone choose me? And I almost lost you. I almost lost everything that actually matters. I reached across the table and took his hand. You were manipulated by someone very skilled at manipulation. That's not your fault. Maybe not entirely. But I should have trusted you. I should have known you'd never hoard money out of selfishness. You and Dad built that fortune for a reason, and I was too immature to see it. You see it now. That's what matters. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, then Michael asked the question that had been hovering between us for months. So what happens now? With the money? With the inheritance? I pulled out a folder David and I had been working on. Your father left very specific instructions about how he wanted the money used. He believed in delayed gratification, in building character before accessing wealth. So here's what we're going to do. I showed him the plan. The trust would remain intact until I passed away. But in the meantime, we'd start a foundation together, the Thomas Hayes Educational Foundation. It would provide scholarships for students pursuing teaching careers, grants for teachers doing innovative work in public schools, and support for educational programs in underserved communities. You'd run it, I said. It would be your work, your legacy. You'd earn a reasonable salary, much better than teaching. Enough to live comfortably, but not extravagantly. And you'd be doing what your father and I always believed in. Using wealth to create opportunity, not just accumulate more wealth. Michael's eyes filled with tears. Dad would have loved this. He would. And he'd be so proud of you, of how you came through this, how you grew from it. What about you? What will you do? I'll keep living my simple life in my simple house. But maybe I'll travel a bit more. Maybe I'll take that trip to Ireland I've always wanted. Maybe I'll spoil some grandchildren someday, when you meet someone who actually deserves you. I'm not sure I trust my judgment on that front anymore. You will. You learned an expensive lesson, but you learned it. The next time someone seems too good to be true, you'll look deeper. You'll trust your instincts. You'll remember what actually matters. Over the next year, we built the foundation together. Michael threw himself into the work with passion I'd never seen in him before. He found his purpose, not in teaching individual students, but in supporting thousands of teachers who would touch millions of students. He dated carefully and slowly. He went to therapy to understand how he'd been manipulated and how to protect himself in the future. He rebuilt his credit, his confidence, his life. And me, I stayed in my little house, tended my garden, had coffee with Ruth, and watched my son become the man his father and I always knew he could be. One evening, almost 2 years after the annulment, Michael and I were working on grant applications for the foundation when he suddenly said, "Mom, I met someone." My heart clenched, but I kept my voice calm. "Tell me about her." "Her name is Sarah. She's a librarian at the school. She's been there for 3 years, but I never really noticed her until a few months ago. She's quiet, thoughtful, kind. She reads constantly. She volunteers at the animal shelter. She lives in a tiny apartment with 2 cats and seems perfectly happy there." "How did you meet?" "She came to a foundation event. She wanted to apply for a grant for a literacy program. She had no idea who I was, no idea about my family or any of this. She just wanted to talk about books and teaching and helping kids learn to love reading." He smiled. "Mom, we've been seeing each other for 3 months, and she still doesn't know about the money. I told her I work for a nonprofit and live with my mom to save money, and she thought that was great. Do you love her?" "I think I might, but I'm going to take it slow. Really slow. And when I do tell her about the foundation, about the inheritance, I want to see how she reacts. I want to know if it changes anything." "That's very wise. I learn from the best." He reached over and squeezed my hand. "Thank you, Mom, for protecting me even when I hated you for it, for keeping the secret until I was ready, for having the courage to tell me the truth when you did. You saved my life. You saved your own life, Michael. I just gave you the tools." 6 months later, I met Sarah. She was everything Michael had described: warm, genuine, interested in ideas and books and making the world better. She and Michael announced their engagement a year after that. And this time, when I looked into the eyes of the woman my son was marrying, I saw love. Real love. The kind that asks for nothing and gives everything. The wedding was small in my garden with 40 close friends and family. Sarah wore a simple dress she bought on sale, and she cried when she said her vows. Michael cried too. I stood in my garden, Thomas's garden, our garden, and watched our son marry a woman who would love him for exactly who he was. I felt Thomas there with me, felt his approval, felt his love. That night, alone in my quiet house, I pulled out the letter Thomas had left me, the one I'd read 100 times. "Meg, you know our boy better than anyone. Wait until he's truly settled, until he knows who he is and what he values. Money changes people, even good people. Make sure he's strong enough to carry this weight." I whispered to the empty room, to my husband's memory, to the universe. "He's strong enough now, Thomas. Our boy is going to be just fine." And he was. 5 years later, the Thomas Hayes Educational Foundation has provided over $15 million in grants and scholarships. Michael and Sarah have 2 children, a daughter named Margaret and a son named Thomas. They live in a modest but comfortable home they bought with no help from me. And Sarah knows everything now and loves us anyway. I'm 68 years old, still living in my little house, still tending my garden, still having coffee with Ruth. I've traveled to Ireland and Scotland and Wales. I've spoiled my grandchildren appropriately, but not excessively. I've watched my son become a leader in education reform. And I've kept the secret of my wealth from everyone except those who need to know. Because Thomas was right, money changes people. But having the wisdom to handle money, to see it as a tool, not an identity, as responsibility, not privilege, that's something you can only learn through living, through making mistakes, through growing. My son learned. He grew. He became strong enough to carry the weight. And when I'm gone, when he finally inherits everything, I know he'll use it wisely. Not because I forced him to, not because I controlled him from beyond the grave, but because he learned what really matters. Family, love, purpose, character. Everything else is just numbers in an account. Asterisk, have you ever had to keep a secret to protect someone you love? Have you ever watched someone you care about make a terrible mistake and had to decide whether to intervene or let them learn on their own? Asterisk. I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Asterisk, if this story resonated with you, please share it with anyone who might be navigating complicated family and financial situations. Sometimes the hardest thing we do for the people we love is give them the space to grow, even when we have the power to make everything easier. Asterisk. Asterisk, remember, wealth is temporary. Character is forever. Asterisk.